1 Samuel 17. The story of David and Goliath takes place in the Elah Valley, a small but important valley east-west that heads into the central hill country of the tribe of Judah. The Philistines controlled the coastal area, and as our story begins, they have taken up a post on the south side of this valley on the hill, and Israel has occupied the northern side of this valley. And for 40 days, what has happened now for 40 days is that we have come upon a situation where instead of having both armies just run in and mass warfare, as it were, they have sent out an individual. It's called a champion, or someone who will represent the nation. Again, this divine patronage idea includes the idea that we might as well not have needless deaths. Let's give each opponent present their most worthy fighter. And in this case, Goliath is his name. He's said to be between 9 and 10 feet tall. What's more important is that he is called an Anakite, or related to the Nephilim. Now, how do we know that? Well, he's from Gath, it says. And if we check on two texts, and I'd recommend you check them if you'd like, for being really careful here, because I think the text is trying to define the storyline this carefully. Also in Joshua 11:22, by comparing these texts, we realize that Gathites are related all the way back to that story in Genesis 6 when divine beings came down and somehow related to women sexually, and they had these giant offspring, the Nephilim. And again, they were the primary target of both that first flood and also Joshua's conquest. Well, they're still alive, and they're living in Gath, and Goliath is thus a descendant of the Nephilim. He takes the position of an infantryman by wearing full armor, a helmet, sword, spear, that sort of thing. And an infantryman position or role is to go slowly, even methodically, into an army and hand-to-hand combat idea. Well, let's talk about David. He's living up in Bethlehem, which is about 15 miles inland, and he comes down to the war, or the confrontation, to bring food to his 3 elder brothers who are part of the military. He sees this, and I think he even understands what's at stake theologically, going all the way back to the conquest idea and what God had told Israel to do. And that's why he says they're not a cause. He tries on Saul's armor. It's too big. And so he takes out, and I think this was his intention all along, he takes his sling out onto the valley floor. By doing that, by the way, he is taking the role of an artilleryman, which the sling was used in ancient warfare. And we found evidence of this, that the stones they used were the size of a human fist, and these have been clocked at 130 miles an hour coming out of a sling. So I've read more than one commentator over the years who believes that as soon as David took the idea of a sling into this battle, that everyone, both the Philistines and the Israelites, knew that the battle was over. There was no way for Goliath to defend himself against that sort of warfare. So let's read, in fact, what the Philistine says to David, and David in return. By now, in our larger story of the Bible, these ideas will sound familiar. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. And the Philistine said, "Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks?" He took that sling probably as a stick. And the Philistine cursed David by his Elohim. In other words, my God Dagon is stronger than your God Yahweh. The Philistine said, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air." But David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. This very day Yahweh will deliver you into my hand, so that all the earth may know that there is an Elohim in Israel." In other words, by comparison, that my Elohim is greater than yours. "And that all this assembly may know that Yahweh does not save by sword or spear, for the battle is Yahweh's, and he will give you into our hand. Now, what right did David have to use the word will? We've all heard a sermon or two on this story, killing our Goliaths, as it were. And there are some applications we can make, but I would, and I think we all realize how difficult it would be to apply this kind of story directly to any kind of metaphorical Goliaths that we face, especially listening to David's words that he knew. He said twice, God will deliver you into my hand. What was he doing? Well, I think, and again, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that David is the consummate theologian of the Old Testament. We'll learn that in the book of Psalms to come. What he's doing is he's using a text, whether he had it in his head or not. I'm sure this was part of the story that he was working with. In Deuteronomy 9, 1-3, Moses says that when you go into Canaan, telling Joshua and the people of Israel, and you meet, and he even mentions them, when you meet people from Anak, you will destroy them because Yahweh will help you destroy them. There's an actual promise made that the people of Anak will be taken care of by Yahweh. So I think he's simply taking a text, a very clear text, a very clear promise, a specific promise, and applying it to a specific situation and even a specific person. Why did Saul not do this prior to this? Why did Saul wait 40 days and have this come to this? I would say, again, Saul is showing no evidence of being a Yahwist in the text. And in fact, back in 1437, at one point, Saul says to God, he asks God through a prophet, it sounds like, shall I go against the Philistines at this point in time? It was a previous battle. And it says that God did not answer him. I think Saul knew that Yahweh knew that Saul knew that he wasn't a Yahwist. And that's why Saul would have been afraid to enter into a battle where he knew that Yahweh was not behind him.